You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a washing machine.
Fonte with a scooping header.
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
Отдача, Остин! Все-таки забил!
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Buffon shot! Oh my word!
Unbelievable. We ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans, available right here on southamptondelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show, and no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thanks for making the show part of your day. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope that you enjoyed the off-season, whatever that was. After an extremely short break, Saints are back in action next weekend against Crystal Palace. And although we won't be in the stadium, we will all be kind of following along in whatever ways we can, whether you're lucky enough to be able to watch the match on television, or you're following along on the radio, or you're just going to listen to a podcast afterwards and catch up. Hopefully you are ready for all of that. And somebody who helped me get ready for the season, both in terms of Fantasy Premier League and in terms of Saints, was Lucy Highnett, this week's guest. You can follow her on Twitter at Lucy Highnett. It is a pleasure, as always, to have Lucy on the show. I don't say this lightly, but she is one of my favorite guests to have on and to have a conversation with. So you will get that conversation right now. And hopefully the things we cover get you ready for the season, as we said before. And I also want to say before we get started that I was on the In That Number podcast this week. If you don't already listen to In That Number and you want to give it a shot, I'm not going to say this is a great episode to do it because you're probably sick of hearing from me, but it's always a pleasure to be on there with Kevin and Ray and whoever else they have joining them that week. But I think it's appearance number 3 or 4. Hopefully I do better in my predictions than I did last year, where I said with a lot of confidence that Bayern Munich were not going to win the Champions League because they wouldn't score enough. Anyway, we'll leave that there and get you to the show. This is Lucy Highnett and I having a conversation on Sunday morning, afternoon, depending on where you live in the world. Hope you enjoy it. And once again, thanks for listening. I'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Lucy Highnett. You can find her on Twitter at Lucy Highnett. You probably already follow her. I'm pretty sure you have more followers than me. Anyway, so Lucy, welcome back. And thanks for joining the show again. I told you before, I'm not quite ready for the season to start. I don't really know what's happened to the off season, but anyway, we're here and it starts next week, and I'm glad to be talking to you again.
It's great to be back on. Yeah, feeling excited. Although the England game has slightly dampened that excitement, I can only hope that Saints are more prepared than England were. But no, looking forward to it. Can't really believe it's already back because it feels like we haven't really stopped at any point. I'm not sure if the players will feel the same, but it's good.
Yeah. I'll be honest. The England game was super exciting from my perspective because I only watched the last 7 minutes of regular time, so it was great. And then I saw what everybody said on Twitter about it afterwards, and I was like, oh, well, maybe it was absolutely dreadful. And I watched the first 7 minutes then later as on a replay, and I can agree with you. It was not great. So yeah, we will talk about that because obviously 2 Saints players were involved in the match, and England did manage to pull out a victory. I don't know if it was a little bit of luck, if it was just the way it should have gone, given that I think Kane's goal should have stood. But we'll talk about all that and everything going on with Saints as well over the course of today. And I'm probably going to wrangle you into helping me with my Fantasy Premier League because I have yet to select a team or a name because I'm not good at those things. So we'll do that as well. But before we do any of that, just how are you? Are you doing all right? I mean, it's now September. The days are starting to get shorter, I assume.
Yes, the days are starting to get shorter. My husband's going back to work tomorrow after the school holidays, and I am starting to go back to the office. So that's kind of weird, but good, I suppose. Nice to see people again. I can't really complain. I mean, I'm aware there's a lot of people probably haven't had a job at this point, so
Right.
I should not complain about that. And we are in our new house, and that is all decorated and furnished and looking like a house. So all good, yeah.
Congratulations on getting that done. I think it was a long time ago that we were talking about the show. You were on the show and we were talking about that, and it just seemed to be stalling. And I'm glad it's worked out now. And I am back in school as well. I know Tom's going back tomorrow, and I just, we don't have students back, so I'll be interested to see how it kind of goes. Even though, I'm sure our government won't do anything the same way yours does, and I don't know if that's good, bad, or otherwise, but we'll just let it be. But yeah, so can we start? We would start with the England game just because.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not English. If people don't know that, listen to my voice.
Haven't guessed.
Yeah. Although Ancestry.com says I am a third, so there's that. I never would have claimed it until now, but there you go. I mean, Ward-Prowse gets a start. Ings is in the squad and comes on later. I mean, there were a lot of people, maybe non-Saints fans, that said Ward-Prowse didn't deserve to be there. Obviously, we're probably kind of biased, but I mean, what did you make of him? Just of those two being selected for the squad in I guess, on their own merit? Do you think they are deserving to be in that kind of squad?
I think they're deserving of a place in the squad. I think Danny Ings is probably cursing his luck a little bit, because before all the pandemic stuff, we'd have probably expected him to get a start, because at that moment Kane and Rashford were both injured, and it looked like we were kind of struggling for a number 9 for that kind of slot in 4-3-3. So he probably didn't get the kind of rub of the green on that one, and probably wasn't expected to start. And then I think Ward-Prowse, to be honest, I was quite surprised he did start. There were a few people suggesting to me that he was going to be the left wing back in the squad, and I was like, well, if you'd seen him play right wing back for Southampton, then you'd know that is definitely not going to happen.
Yeah.
And are you insane? Because that was a whole new thing. I don't know if you saw that. We have no kind of left-sided defender in the England squad, so that was confusing. Which Brian Bertrand, not giving him a go. No.
Yeah.
But no, Ward-Prowse, didn't expect to see him in there. And to be honest, I'm not sure the role in that system kind of works for him. I think a couple of years ago, I'd have said that he is the ideal man for the right side of a central midfield. But I think he's kind of been so kind of carefully shaped and coached by Hasenhüttl for that deep-lying role in a 4-2-2-2 that he almost didn't quite know what to do with his role yesterday, I felt. And I think it's quite challenging, because Iceland were very kind of compact, very deep-lying, and it was difficult to find space in a kind of attacking area.
Yeah.
But it just meant that he was slightly confused. And it was interesting, because I think if you looked at those players on paper, a lot of people would have had Ward-Prowse and Rice in a pivot, and then probably Foden ahead.
Yeah.
Which might have suited everyone a little bit better. I don't think he played particularly badly, but I just don't think it would be anything that would have made Southgate think that he's a kind of permanent option for the England team.
Yeah. I would have thought that him and Rice sitting next to each other would have been more accustomed to the role that or more in line with the role he's accustomed to at Saints, right? And then Foden allowing him to get forward a little bit more. But like I said, I didn't watch the entire game. I saw the numbers, 92% pass accuracy, 1 clearance, couple key passes, couple tackles. So not like overwhelmingly good numbers, but I also didn't see anybody point out any massive mistakes he made. And we'll come on to what he did later on, maybe save the game for England anyway. But I don't know. I'm happy that he's there, because he's played for England. He's captained England at the the underage levels, or at the youth levels, I should say. And then it was, he missed out because like we said, he didn't really have a role. He didn't really have a set spot at Saints. And then he's kind of done all the things we said he needed to do, and he's locked down that role. And then he goes and is asked to play somewhere slightly different, and it doesn't necessarily come off as well as we would have hoped. But my question about Saints with that is, given that Højbjerg is gone and he's likely to be playing next to Romeu, is he going to need to push forward a little bit more and maybe change his game a little bit? Or are we expecting him just to kind of almost play the exact same role he played last season?
I think he actually did play a little bit more advanced. That's only my perception. I don't really have any kind of like heat maps or anything to justify that. But I did get the impression that Hasenhüttl had slightly changed the balance of that pivot, so that instead of it being kind of an alternating thing that you had with Ward-Prowse and Højbjerg, where they kind of like would vary their runs between them, it seemed to be a bit more of a traditional Romeo sits and Ward-Prowse goes and does stuff. So I think there already has been a tweak in balance. I don't know if anyone else has kind of felt the same thing. And I would expect that to continue. I don't think he'll ever be asked to do a huge amount just because of the system we play. Armstrong tends to play quite narrow,
right?
More so than you'd get off the 4-3-3 style that England play.
Sure.
And then you've also kind of got, we play, with Walker-Peters coming in, he'll probably be quite aggressive on that wing as well in terms of the runs he makes. So I don't think it'll be a massive issue for him. And to be honest, I think he works better when he has a lot of the play in front of him. Being ahead of the ball, I don't think he works particularly well on those kind of like very tight spaces on the half turn. I think having the play in front of him makes more sense.
Okay.
So I don't see it as a particular concern from a Southampton perspective. It was just from an England perspective. You could see he wasn't quite comfortable with the role, and I don't think you should expect him to be, given that he doesn't really play there on a regular basis, and he hasn't worked with England team before. Because I know that Southgate's very wedded to that 4-3-3, so he's never gonna change. But it's just a little bit of a tough one for Ward-Prowse, I think. I think he'd be interesting in a squad for a competition like the Euros, just because if you did want to change up shape, he gives you kind of another option. But yeah, I don't think he did anything to kind of like tarnish his reputation as such. It's just I don't think it was really the game for him.
Okay. Yeah, no, and that's going to be what it is. But England are going to have to learn how to break teams down, right? Like that's going to be something they're going to come up against quite often, and will be
absolutely. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how they play. Going forward, they're going to have a much tougher match coming up later in the week, and I will be interested to see how much Ings plays, how much Ward-Prowse plays. I know people were not expecting Ings to play kind of at all, but he did come on, and I'll be honest, I only saw a little bit of it, so I don't really know how well he played. His rating on Who Scored was as 6.5, but that means almost nothing given that it was a substitute appearance, and it basically means he didn't make a massive mistake, I guess.
Yeah, and it was just before we went down to 10 men, I think, because he came on to play with Kane, and then of course we ended up making substitutions after going down to 10 men, and it all sort of shifted the game. So he just didn't really see a lot of the ball, to be honest. So there's nothing I don't think Southgate would have got anything out of it really in terms of assessing Ings. And yeah, it was just tough circumstances to come on when we were kind of struggling to break them down, and then went down to that 10 men. I don't know if you saw the Walker challenge, but it was quite frankly ridiculous.
I didn't.
So
unfortunately,
yeah, no, he was on a booking, and then sort of 20 yards from their box, he decided that he was just going to slide in, sort of pointlessly. I'm quite angry about it, to be fair. I just don't understand why he would do that. But yeah.
Well, you think he's been around enough. He should know better, right? Like he's.
But then we said that about his sex.
Yeah, you're right. Well, at least he's not our worry. We're not going to have to worry about him doing that to us.
No, that's true. And
we'll just have to see. But I mean, overall, we got to talk about the penalty situation. So, I mean, first of all, were you surprised at Sterling taking the penalty, given that he won it? And no, I was not like trying to pull a fast one by saying we're going to talk about the penalty and then we're going to talk about England's first. No, I just completely forgot we should talk about the goal. Some people were hoping, I think, that Ward-Prowse or Ings would be taking it, but I wasn't really all that surprised, other than Man City seemed to miss penalties quite often. So maybe like they weren't going to let Sterling take it, but he took it and scored it. And I think that's just open and shut and fine, right?
Yeah, I think it was one of those situations where they didn't actually have a lot of kind of experienced attacking internationals on the pitch. I think it's probably unrealistic to expect Ings or Ward-Prowse, who aren't regular members of the England squad, to be taking penalties. And then after that, you weren't left with a huge amount of options in terms of what was left on the pitch. Sterling, in my opinion, shouldn't be allowed to take penalties because he's not very good at them. I think there was a long justification after the game where they were like, oh, it's a really good idea to roll your penalties down the middle, like that, because it's the last minute and the keeper's bound to dive, blah, blah, blah. it wasn't a good penalty. I don't think anyone can suggest it was. It went in, so that's all right. But yeah, it just screamed to me of a lack of options, and then Sterling being a relatively senior player being like, yeah, I'll have that, thank you. So yeah, not a lot to say on that one. Don't think it was a penalty. Don't think either of them were penalties. So yeah,
okay,
just a really terrible game.
Yeah, and no VAR to complain about. Other than there was no VAR to complain about, right? Like it might have been.
Yeah, I mean, I did see people that I see regularly complain about VAR, then be like, oh, if only we have VAR. But there we go.
Yeah, it is what it is. Let's talk about the real reason I want to talk about penalties is, Iceland get the penalty almost immediately after Sterling scores. And granted, I said I only watched the last 7 minutes live, which was great. So they go down the other end, and I think Gomez, they just get tangled up, and the guy goes down. Penalties given, and Ward-Prowse, who is not the captain, who has no business talking to the referee, is just standing on the penalty spot, clearly just destroying it. He's not even trying to hide it, and it's fantastic. Because he's our player, it's fantastic. And then you wonder, like, oh, maybe it won't make a difference. And then the guy skies it. And I'm like thinking, like, he could get booked for that, right? He could, I think it is a booking for intentionally kind of destroying the pitch or anything like that. But what was your kind of, did you see it when it happened live, or did it take like the Twitter storm that happened afterwards to alert you to what he was doing?
Yeah, no, I didn't see it at all. But then I saw it all on Twitter afterwards. I think it's been quite a divisive act. And I think I can't actually in any way view it with a kind of balance, because I think it's hilarious and like classic Ward-Prowse, which I don't think we'd have said a couple of years ago, because he always seemed like a nice boy from the academy, which I know he hated as an image. But recently that's kind of become part of him. He's become somewhat a master of the dark arts. Mm-hmm. Palace fans might see it slightly differently. I find that difficult, because I think had it been a different player, I might have been a bit more critical about it. It's not something I would actively promote, but then it also kind of amuses me, which I don't suppose it should. Tom, my husband, got very angry about it and said it was very immoral and some other stuff. But, I struggle to get really wound up about it, and I probably should. So, I think it was something that is classic him, that is he's kind of quite gritty, and I quite like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, probably not something that I should actively endorse.
Yeah. Well, he's very quickly gone from the guy who would make a good son-in-law, right? Because that's, I think, how Puel described him.
Yeah, Puel said, yeah.
To just in the space of, what is it, 2 or 3 years, just he's gotten stronger. He's gotten just a little bit meaner. He is clearly in tune with what needs to be done and is willing to do it, whether that's tackles, cynical fouls, doing things like this. Like, this is not the thing I would teach my daughters, like U10 team, right? Like, I'd be like, go stomp on the penalty spot, because the pitches that they play on are also terrible anyway. Doesn't matter. But like, that's just not something you want to teach kids. But at the same time, it's like, whatever you got to do to win, that's it. You just hope maybe he would do it against Spain or Croatia or France. You wouldn't have to do it against Iceland, right?
Yeah, it was a signal of our desperation, really, wasn't it?
Yeah. I thought, because you could just kind of feel the relief from Twitter when Sterling scored. Like, okay, we're going to get through this, because England drawing with Iceland to open this is not going to do anybody any good, right? Like, nobody's going to be happy about this. And then they go down, and it's like, oh no, now it is going to be a draw. And then just the let off from when the guy skied it was, I don't know. I think Ward-Prowse deserves a little bit of credit, even if Southgate's not going to come out to the media and say super proud of him for what he did, because that's not something you want to do. But I would normally like take the moral high ground and say he shouldn't be doing that. But I think I've learned in my short time watching football and watching like football, especially international stuff from several years ago, is there seems to be a lot of stuff like that. There seems to be things that happen just away from the camera, off the ball, that I don't pick up on, because I'm not a kind of a native watcher of it. And so I haven't, it's taken me a long time, but I think that stuff happens. And the fact that I got caught on camera is unfortunate for him, because people are going to be mad about it. But like you said, it's mostly Palace fans, so forget it. It's fine. We'll see if he does it against Crystal Palace, but it won't. won't probably happen because Zaha doesn't take penalties anyway, so it doesn't matter. By the way, I think Zaha only scored 4 goals last year. I think I'm right. I think it was 4.
Not that you've looked it up, but you think it's probably that.
I think it's probably that. Which I'm just saying, this is not like.
But he's definitely worth £80 million, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely not pay that for him or anything. I hope he gets a move to just somewhere. I hope he gets the lineup against next to Charlie Austin at West Brom or something. That would be fantastic.
Or a transfer to China or something.
Yeah, we can go on to that. Actually, that's a perfect segue because China has been ruining things. They've been, there's the Chinese broadcasting deal is
of course, yeah.
It's supposed to be, cut after a 3-year deal. And it sounds familiar, right? Chinese company terminates 3-year deal early with blank English company or football club. And I'm kind of upset about the LD Sports thing with Saints. But I think even a bigger chunk of change is that international broadcasting rights is the biggest chunk of I think revenue for all Premier League teams, and is the international money that comes into it from broadcasting. And so to have China pull out of that after such a short time being involved, I think it's almost 600 million pounds total in that 3-year deal. That's now just not going to be there. And so I'm a little bit worried about that, but especially in the era of we're not sure when people are going back or how full the stadium will be and what match day revenue will be. So I think that's concerning for the Premier League as a whole. I'm not sure if you care about that or have thought about that at all or anything like that.
I suppose the only kind of good thing about that is that it will affect all teams kind of to a certain extent. I presume it's all being split. The loss is split amongst us. So I guess in terms of competition, it's not such an issue. And perhaps, a lot of the top clubs that do particularly well for kind of Chinese fan bases, it might affect them more. Don't know if that's a decent theory. But as for the LD Sports thing, I don't think, given how sketchy the whole thing seemed at the beginning and the impact that COVID-19's had on kind of international economies, that we can be incredibly surprised. I do think there's a decent chance that had the pandemic not happened, it could have rattled on a bit longer. I think probably Saints got unlucky in that sense that this has kind of magnified the problems with what they agreed to. But I think we all had certain reservations about the LD Sports agreement before this. There were the case of people trying to find some evidence of it on the internet. I was briefly kind of reassured when Espanyol also got sponsored by them, because I thought, well, at least there's someone else involved in this weird nonsense. But I think it's fairly evident that Saints saw a figure that they liked, and for whatever reason they turned a blind eye to the kind of various issues to do with whether they actually existed, what their purpose was, what their intentions were, and I think they've paid the price for that. I don't think they're unusual. I don't think for a minute that Premier League clubs are the bastions of morality and kind of checking the sources of their income. And I think we've seen plenty of other cases across the Premier League where teams have been guilty of taking money from fairly questionable sources. But I don't think, as much as we might be outraged, we might be taking legal action against them or whatever, I don't think we can claim to have no idea that there were problems with that finance, and that finance might not be the most reliable if the economy, for whatever reason, had a problem. So there's that. I think there's also the issue of who we replace them with, which has caused kind of another layer to it. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Not good. We'll come to that part. I just want to ask you though, like as a football fan, as a fan of the club, I guess what are you feeling? Like, do fans have the right to be upset by the fact that money's coming into the club? Because ultimately we want money there, right? We want to be able to buy these players. We have to show, not intent, but what's the ambition, right? Like we don't, there's no ambition. It's what gets thrown around on Twitter all the time.
If there's no money, there's no ambition.
Right. And so you want these players to come in. So you understand to an extent the club taking the extra £2.5 million a season for 3 seasons and kind of casting a blind eye as to what this company is. But what's upset me the most is I think that the club they didn't do their homework, and I want the club to do that, because the sustainability of the club is more important than us getting a new midfielder, right? Like I just think that doing something like this, like I refuse to let them off the hook this time, because they made a mistake in opting for the figure that they saw that they liked, instead of taking a few £1 million less. And I realized that I don't run a business. I've never run a business. Like my finances are like hardly like what people should like model theirs after. But it upsets me to a fairly large extent that they did that, and then tried to spin it as, oh, you know, we had to end our partnership early because of this. And it's like, no, one, it's a startup. Like nobody expected it to last 3 years, because most of them don't. 2, they're shelling out money, and you can see like all of these companies in China and the money in China going out towards foreign football, especially English football, but and then they're also buying all these players they're bringing in, and then you can see China putting limits on this, and so you realize that you're kind of playing with fire by even going into the deal like that. And then I refuse to let them off the hook and say, oh, it's okay, this should have never happened in terms of LD Sports should have upheld their end of the bargain. Like I just don't buy it, and then going into the fact that it's a betting sponsor now, like that angered me as well. And I don't know what your thoughts on it, but I'll put my foot in my mouth before you can tell me to shut up. I'm disappointed.
I think you're entirely right. I think also what particularly grates with people is that we're told as a fan base that we don't spend ridiculous amounts of money, because we are concentrating on being sustainable, right, and planning, business in a right and proper way, which means that we, are stable and we know where our money's coming from, and we have a regular source of income, and we're on top of our wage bill, etc., etc. And then you hear them commit to these kinds of deals. And as you rightly said, I thought Simmons had a really good attempt at with that kind of interview with the Athletic, being like, we're really outraged. They've let us down. We will be taking legal action, as if there's some kind of major shock, as if you can't look at the nuts and bolts of the original deal and not see some kind of issue with it.
Yeah.
And I think, judging by the reaction I've seen from other people, he's probably done quite an effective job, because a lot of people, are very ready to say, oh, Chinese income, blah, 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 blah. They don't like it. They're kind of quite cynical about it.
Yeah.
And it works to a certain extent, because it plays off certain kind of agendas that people have about Chinese, involvement in English football. But I have massive problems with it. And then, as you said, replacing it with a betting company. Now, the difficulty here is, yes, the majority of English football clubs, certainly in the Premier League, are sponsored by a betting company.
Yeah.
So yes, kind of on a very pragmatic level, maybe we shouldn't be that surprised that we end up with a betting company, especially when we're clearly scraping around quickly to try and find some kind of new revenue. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, this club sells itself, not only going back to that original thing as a sustainable club that's built on sensible finance, but also as a family club, which is, in the past hinted that it wasn't interested in that kind of income. So you're putting quite a lot of your principles to one side at the moment for both of these deals. But it almost feels like the first screw up kind of sold them down the river on the second one. They almost didn't really have a choice, because we're not in a financial position where we can say, sorry, we'll go without a sponsor this season because we can't find one that we think is, suitable for the ethos of the club. So I'm not comfortable with a betting company. That's not what I thought Southampton was about. But at the same time, I'm not going to get on my high horse and say I don't want to have anything to do with this football club, because fundamentally, sponsorship is a massive part for Premier League football on every level. And we didn't really have a choice once we'd screwed up the LD Sports thing. So, I'm not very impressed with the whole thing, to be fair. And I think the club have had to kind of scramble to spin it. As far as I can tell, Saints fans still can't buy a shirt, can they now? Because they've had to pull all the old shirts and don't have replacements for the new ones. it all seems a bit of a general mix-up. Is it a 1 year deal?
It's a 1 year deal, yeah. So it's totally an emergency thing, and they had dealt with sportsbet.io in the past, and I think in that Athletic article they were able to pull the deal together in just 3 days. So it shows that there was already some sort of partnership there. It's like you said, it's not my favorite. I won't buy the shirt with sports betting company on it. I won't. And I won't either. Gambling is a weird thing, but like there was a whole thing in like racing here in the United States when they forced them to stop using cigarettes as a cigarette brands as a sponsor, and it was this huge deal. And like my parents both smoke. My dad's got lung cancer. Like we've been through it with that, and so I just don't want to see those things. I have friends who struggle with gambling, and that's probably why I am where I am on this. And there are plenty of people who can do it responsibly and enjoy it, and it's part of what they do when they throw a tenner on Leicester City to win the league, or Danny Ings to win Golden Boot, or whatever it is. Like, and that's fine, but I just don't want to see it. I mean, the fact that you can't print it on the kids' shirts says
it all.
Yeah, if it's not good enough for them, like, can I get a kid's shirt in an adult large? Is that a thing?
And also, just on a side note, the Bitcoin bit on it, that really annoys me. Just irrationally annoys me. Any other sponsor, I'd be like, that's all right. But that Bitcoin thing, get off. And also, I think there's another layer to this. As far as I'm aware, sportsbet.io are an offshore company. Mm-hmm. So that's adding another layer of not being quite comfortable with this, just from a kind of tax and kind of legislation perspective as well. So, I don't think it's ideal in any means, but once you've done the LD Sports saga, you probably left yourself with very little option. Yeah, and that's what we teach kids not to do as a high school teacher, right? You want options. Options are good. Like limiting your options, making decisions that are going to limit your future options, not great. But here's my other thing. I'm just going to continue to pile on the club because I don't know why. I do like this club. I am very happy to be a Southampton supporter. I'm just not happy about this. But I think losing the sponsorship and realizing you need to get back some of that. They could have shored up this money by having a more reliable sponsor. We know that. But if you're also going to go after this company, I don't know if this company has any money to give us. Like that might be the thing, is that there's just no money there. But if they are, they said in the Athletic article, they are pursuing this and they are going to fight for this. And if that's the case, if you're going to get that money anyway, you could have done a lot better than sportsbet.io. You didn't actually need their money right now to do that. I'm going to say that may be because they're not very confident about getting any money. Okay. Because I feel like a lot of the we're taking them to court, blah, 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 was more of the kind of needing to put a spin on it. I don't know if I'm being cynical about it. Okay. But I'm thinking if they suddenly pulled out of a deal, and there never really was evidence of them, are we really confident that we can squeeze £7.5 million out of them? Yeah. I don't think we are. And I think you're right, because I think if they were confident that they probably could have got away with a year of having the Saints Foundation on the shirt or something. Yeah, or I think that would have been great. Or I've said this in the newsletter now, and it'll be on the In That Number podcast, which I was on earlier. Thanks, guys. They with everything that the country has gone through and the world has gone through, slap the NHS on the front of the shirt and just say, we're not charging you for this. Like, we just want to do this because it's the right thing to do. And that would have been, and I realize, like I've said it 1,000 times, like this is all rainbows and unicorns in terms of how I'm thinking about it, but that would have won over, like, no, Saints fans would have. Yeah, I don't think I would have let it go. It's not going to happen. To do it. No. Yeah. Okay. And I think also, if you were going to have a club that would do that, it would be one that was in a much stronger financial position than we are. Yeah. Particularly in terms of the interest of the owner and whether the owner can get money invested and whether the owner wants to sell and all that rumbling on. Sure. Okay. Probably had to be a stronger club that was going to do that. And I think they've shown how desperate's a bit unfair, but it's shown how much that sponsorship money is an issue and it has to come in. So that's what it is. And I think probably also they got their business done early, which I think Simmons alluded to in that Athletic article. That almost made it even more important that they sorted the sponsorship out because they'd spent all that money on Salisu and Walker Peters. So
You got to balance.
I suppose we should get onto that. I've segued into that as well now.
Yeah, you are good at this. And I should say that we are not sponsored by The Athletic, nor do I have a 40% off code for you to try. But I am a subscriber, and I think that it's really good. So if nobody's out there, if you're out there, if nobody's out there, then great, because nobody will hear this, my rambling on. But if you haven't done it, you sound like you are still a subscriber. I stayed on as well.
I am till the end of the month. I haven't decided whether I'm extending.
Okay.
I'm still mourning the loss of Carl, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Well, he's still there. He's just
as a Man United person.
Yeah, and
I can't get on board with that.
No,
I've already got a boss that's a Man United fan. Too much Man United, and you just feel a bit nauseous, don't you? Really?
Yeah. There's one kid walking around school last year with a West Ham kid. So,
that's not good. How did that happen?
That's the question. Where did you get it? He goes, I just like the color, and I go, you're what's wrong with America.
Try Burnley instead. Similar color.
You spent $100 on a kit that just
have a
gives you
name
like
on
the color. Like I don't do that. I don't know.
No, some people do that though, don't they? It's more of a kind of fashion statement than a.
Yeah.
I still can't get West Ham as a fashion statement either.
No.
I mean,
no. And I think don't they have a betting company on the front too?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. See,
Bet 365 was it?
And that's the thing is I can wear the Virgin Media logo to school, and the kids just make fun of me for having giant Virgin on my chest, which is like what high school kids do. It's great. I can't. I'm not allowed to wear. Somebody bought me a Celtic shirt from a long time ago. Can't wear that because it's got beer or alcohol on it.
Yeah.
Can't wear the betting to school, so it ruins my whole Friday or any midweek match thing of wearing a shirt. So, anyway, let's talk about other ways the club is losing money. In terms of transfers, not because I don't think
investing. Come on, investing money.
Well, no, I'm talking about like Wesley Hoot and
okay, yeah, no,
Guido Carrillo,
just flushing it away there.
Mario Lamina, yeah, no. Can we talk about Lamina and Reed both going to Fulham, and we'll get on to, because I can assume you're happy with Salisu and Kyle Walker-Peters and what they'll do, but I want to get all the negative out, and then we'll end it on a high.
Okay.
Kind of like the way our season went last year. So I mean, Lamina, we couldn't sell him because nobody can afford him and his wages and all of that other stuff. But is the loss of Reed to you on a permanent deal? Is that? I mean, we are a little light in midfield. Maybe is that a problem for you?
I think we are light in midfield, and I think there should be kind of a will from the club to try and replace Højbjerg. I think McKennie was linked for a while, and of course he's ended up going to Juventus. So I'm not going to try and persuade people that we should be competing against Juventus for a player. But I think that was something they were clearly looking at, and I think it is something we need to do. I had thought for a while that Reed would be that player that they tried, just because we're clearly not a club that has a load of finance. He'd impressed quite a lot in the Championship, and obviously Fulham, and I think a couple of other clubs were interested in taking him this season. So I thought that might be what we tried, just from a kind of pragmatic perspective more than anything. It seems to me that for whatever reason, either Ralph couldn't promise him regular minutes and he wasn't interested in being a bench player, which I can totally get at 25. You want to be a regular player in whatever team you're playing in. Right. Or he just decided that he'd rather just play for Fulham, where he's kind of already built up an influence and a kind of an appreciation with Scott Parker. So I'm not going to pretend that I'm devastated, because I'm not. I thought he was a useful player to have around, but I think once we got into that situation with his contract, which seems like a recurring theme at the moment, we probably didn't have a lot of options. Not a lot of options again as well. This keeps happening. Anyway, we had to get rid of him. The fact that we've managed to get Lamina off at the same time, I think, is a result. Get his wages off the books. I think now I've heard conflicting reports on the Lamina thing. I've heard people say that Fulham have an option to buy, and I've heard people say that they have an obligation to buy if they stay up. What have you heard on that one?
I've heard both as well, and I'm choosing to believe, because I'm going to be positive, that it is the obligation to buy if they stay up. And I think he has to make a certain number of appearances, which makes it to me less likely. I heard they have to stay up and he's got to make 20 appearances or something like that. And then I don't know. I don't know how it all kind of works out. I will say that the rumors around everybody pretending to know what's happening is difficult to to make
and
heads or tails.
hilarious. I love that also people are very sure about what fees players go for, even though they're all undisclosed.
Yeah.
And then they all come up with a different figure anyway. So that's great. But Lamina going out on loan, I think that's best. I know a lot of people kind of pine after him a little bit because there is no doubt that he has a lot of talent, that he has the ability to kind of shape and define a game, but he does it so infrequently that I have absolutely no interest in carrying him for the 5 games out of 6 when he doesn't do it.
Yeah.
And I think he's such a horrible match for the style of football we now play, where you're expected to do so much off the ball because, let's face it, he doesn't really have the appetite for it.
Right.
And I think from a Fulham perspective, what the hell are you doing? Like, of all the people to have in a Premier League relegation battle, which I think realistically Fulham probably are going to be in or around about, why would you go for Mario Lemina? The CEO at Fulham, I can't remember his name.
I don't know, but he likes to spend money.
He does like to spend money.
He owns the Jacksonville Jaguars. That guy.
Yeah, that guy. Whoever he is, he was like, oh yeah, we've been looking through Lemina's stats and we really like the look of him, so we think he's one of our priorities for the summer. And literally, I just didn't know what I was reading. So I think they've done really well with the retransfer. I think 8 million's a bit of a steal, to be quite frank, because 8 million doesn't really buy you anything anymore.
Right.
But they've had to take Lamina in the process. So I think, it's a decent deal, I think, for Saints to get Lamina out the door at the same time. I don't think we'll end up selling him next summer as much as I'd love to. But that's kicked that can down the road. Then we still have the likes of Hoot and Carrillo and all those. Although Hoot, I love that Hoot claimed at the beginning of the summer that he had loads of options, that he was definitely going to get a move, and it's gone completely dead.
Yeah, it's because they looked at his stats. They weren't impressed. Apparently, people are saying he's on loan to Anderlecht, I think. So we'll see. But I mean, the problem with all of these guys is they were all, and we should say that the hierarchy at Southampton now are not, it's heavily changed from what made these signings that have kind of hampered us financially and prevented us from really going after players maybe in the transfer market. But the LD Sports deal was signed by the people who are in power now. So like they've all made mistakes that have cost us. Granted, I bet you the player, like if you look at the wages these guys are on and just the amortization table from their transfers, like they're costing us much, much more. But yeah, that's there. But no, Hoot probably is going to wind up going on loan every year until his contract runs out, because there's no reason for him to take a huge pay cut to play, because he knows we'll send him out on loan and he'll play somewhere else that he actually likes, and we'll continue to pay his wages, and he'll be essentially set for life as a result.
Oh, I hate that guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on swiftly. More positive news.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Salisu and KWP for a minute. I was impressed with KWP, especially after the restart when he got a consistent run of games. I was impressed when I want to say he got an assist in the 7-1 over Swansea that I was pretty happy with. I think for the opening goal. But I mean, are you? I assume you're happy with the fact that we've locked him up now and he's our player, and hopefully, we see him bombing down that right hand side with Armstrong tucking in a little bit to allow him space, and I think it'll all be great. Yeah,
I'm really positive about it. I think it's unusual that you get the opportunity to kind of test drive a player before you have to buy them.
Yeah.
And I thought from the way the KWP loan deal had been set up that it was literally going to be a kind of stopgap until we had the summer to kind of reassess that position. I'm assuming he impressed more than they expected, or Ralph was more keen, or the Højbjerg kind of interest from Spurs kind of created that kind of dynamic for the deal to happen, because I didn't expect it to happen. But I've been really impressed with him. I think he's a good age. I think he's got a good kind of personality, and he seems to impress people. And I think, as you said, he's building a good relationship with Armstrong on that right wing. So I think it's a really positive one. I think I've seen 12 million seems to be the kind of consensus on that fee. Does that sound right? 10 million, 12 million?
According to Transfermarkt, you are correct. 11.97 million is the fee. So yeah, 12 million. From
Keeping
Spurs.
that 30 grand back for something else.
Yeah. And we gave Højbjerg to them for transfer marks. Figure is 14.94, so essentially 15 million. So I mean, we get a player who's 23, who obviously fits our system, who addresses a need that we have, because Valerie kind of didn't kick on for whatever reason, sickness, virus, off-field issues, everything. And so I think that's great. I think Bertrand looks like he's a little bit he's hungry as well, which is great.
I was going to say about that fee, which is kind of why I asked about it. I think Matty Cash from Forest has just gone to Villa, also a right back who I think we were interested in at one stage earlier in the season, for like 16, 17 million. And I think to get someone that's already got Premier League minutes and has already been kind of tested to a certain extent is really impressive when you consider what people are having to pay elsewhere. So I think when you look at Jamal Lewis, who, for example, is going to Newcastle, he's a similar case. I think it's like 18 or 19 million. And again, he's only had a season of Premier League football. So I think it looks like good value to me as well, not just kind of a convenient deal. So I'm really positive about that. And I think he's obviously got a long-term deal, and you would hope to kind of the peak of his career be at Saints. So that's really good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. The other defensive signing, obviously, Salisu. I was able to talk to somebody who kind of scouted him and looked at him kind of in depth, but just on the surface, are you feeling like, I think the deal with him is he's definitely going to come in almost like Bednarak did, where he's not going to be expected to make a start right away or be a starter right away, but you could see him start to get more and more games. We may see him, he's still, I think, rehabbing an injury, but with just how fast these fixtures are going to come, if we make any kind of a cup run, he could be involved as soon as he's fit. And I think that eventually you will see him start to take, or he could take some of those minutes away from either Stevens or Bednarak. And I think right now he fits better alongside Stevens, but I like Bednarak a lot, and I don't think there's any reason to replace him. So I don't know. What are you thinking about Salisu in terms of that addressing a definite need in the squad? I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think the Kevin Danso loan clearly didn't work out, and we obviously lost Yoshida in January. So I think there was a need in the squad to have another centre back. I think some of Yannick Vestergaard's comments recently suggest to me he thinks he's closer to starting regularly than I realistically think he is. Yeah. I'm surprised, given how much interest there seems to be in him at one stage, that we haven't actually had a deal made there. But probably he's needed as well from a kind of depth perspective. I'm not going to pretend that I've seen loads of Salisu because I haven't. But from everything I've read and all the kind of stats I've seen and what people have been saying about him, as well as his ability on Football Manager, I think he looks like a really good signing. He looks like a lot more of the kind of signing we want to make in terms of age and profile and all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I would actually like to see him next to Bednarak. I think people will say that Stevens probably has more kind of on the ball to kind of grant him a place, but I just think Bednarak has not really done anything wrong, and I still, and I know this is bad, have trouble trusting Stevens. Yeah. It's going to be a while before I can.
Yeah.
And I still feel like he's got like a mistake in him. So I would have Bednarak and Salisu when he's ready. But I do agree that it's going to be a while before we're at that stage. I think what with the injury and the fact that Ralph historically likes to spend a long time with a player before he lets them kind of run loose. If you think about how long it took Walker Peters to have a go, despite the fact we didn't really have any choices.
Right.
Suggests to me that he, likes to check that a player is ready for it. And I think we saw Adams thrown in at the beginning of the season, and for whatever reason it didn't really work out. And then we didn't see him for a very long time after that. Makes me think that he will want to be very sure about a player before he starts kind of unsettling what is now a very settled kind of first 11. So
yeah,
I think it'll be a little while before we see him, but I think it's very exciting. And it's clearly one of those ones I think that the club will be looking at as a potential kind of development prospect that we might be able to sell on. I know people don't like me saying that because no one likes to think they're buying a player to sell them again. But that one kind of particularly sticks out to me as one that could work out that way in terms of his relative inexperience and his kind of in that kind of mould. He's a left-sided centre-back, which, are always kind of in short supply. And he's kind of got a lot of the kind of physical attributes that top clubs will be interested in if he can kind of develop the other aspects of his game.
Yeah, and he hasn't been playing organized football that long, which means there's ample room to grow. It's not a guarantee that he will, but there's ample room to get there. So we can hope that is the case. And like as you said, it'll be a while with Ralph the way he works. We're probably I'll ask you in a few minutes to kind of lay out who you think is going to start next weekend. And I'm pretty sure we're going to arrive at about the same thing. But before we do that, I do want to ask you, I secretly ask you for FPL advice more often than I'm willing to actually admit. And sometimes I just say, oh, I was just thinking about this just to see if you go, are you crazy? Why would you do that? And then I won't do it. But
I don't think we've actually had that yet.
No, you've never done that, which is great because it makes me think. I listened to one fantasy football podcast just to go okay, this seems logical. I think I can do this. I still don't know how to use my chips. So I think I ended last year with still having some, which I know is bad.
Oh, yes, a big no.
Yeah, I got the triple captain off. It got me 4 points or 3 points or something like that. I think.
Yes, I triple captained Mane's 1 point.
Yeah.
So that went really well.
I think I had a City player. It didn't work. But anyway, I mean, in terms of Saints assets, are you going to have Ings in your team? Is there somebody else that you think fits based on price and potential performance, or what are you thinking about at this point?
Well, I'm thinking that actually the people that run FPL have actually been quite generous because I think they've looked at our kind of overall position as opposed to kind of the trajectory we're on.
Yeah.
And also, I'm ever the optimist. So I like to think that we're going to continue that trajectory. So I think nearly all of our assets have been assets, as FPL players like to call it assets. We'll just call them players. All of our players have been undervalued, more or less, I think. Jan Valery being priced more expensive than Walker Peters was a bit of a blunder on their part, but we'll move past it because that's good news for people. Yeah. I think, in my opinion, other than Ings, who is a solid option because, the guy just scored 22 Premier League goals, he's always going to be a good option. And 8.5 million is fine. That's fine. But apart from Ings, I think McCarthy's well priced. There aren't very many £4.5 million goalkeepers, and he's one of the better ones, I'd say. Decent option. Carl Walker-Peters, £4.5 million, again, decent option. I think there aren't that many £4.5 million defenders that I'd want, and he's probably one of them. So again, bargains. I think Armstrong is £5.5 million, which is pretty cheap for a midfielder, especially one who kind of plays in that wide 10 position that Hasenhüttl likes to call it. Mm-hmm. So I think he's a good option, particularly as he's £500,000 cheaper than Ward-Prowse and a full £1 million cheaper than Redmond. And then I think the other option, and the one I've kind of warmed up on quite a lot over the summer, is Adams. He's only £6 million, and £6 million doesn't normally get you a lot in the striker category. And I think, given how well he finished the end of the season, I think that's probably quite a good purchase. Our opening fixture is quite good, and he's a full £2.5 million cheaper than Ings. And I'm at the moment struggling to justify spending that extra money on Danny. So I think Adams may be in for me. It's a week for me to change, though, so perhaps not.
If Adams gets in your team, is he your first sub, or is he in your starting lineup?
Oh, he's in my starting lineup. Okay. No, my bench is normally pretty weak at this stage of the season because until he build up some team value, there's probably not a lot of point having a lot on there. So
I usually go the opposite way. So
team
loses value. Which again, I'm not good at this. My goal every year is just don't finish bottom. Don't embarrass yourself. Which is okay. I can do that usually.
It's all about ambition.
No, yeah, I don't have ambition. And I can say that the first year I played fantasy baseball or fantasy American football or even fantasy Premier League, I did very, very well. I kind of not having a clue. and then like you get a little bit of a clue, and then you just blow it, and then it's from there. It's just like, okay, I listen to
The Dunning-Kruger effect, isn't it?
It's terrible. And I don't know what it is, but sometimes I just like I walked away from all the rest of the fantasy sports in America because I'm just like, I'm going to go out on a high, and just call it good. And anytime anybody brings up the fact that I finished dead last in our fantasy baseball league, I'll just say like, I had to change my lineup like 162 times, and I just didn't have that kind of that's a commitment that I'm not willing to make. I think that's fine. I haven't built my team yet. I also don't have a good name, but I will.
You have a good name. That's what you play for, surely.
Yeah. Usually the names I come up with are not like Premier League names, so
okay.
I'm gonna have to come up because they're easier because there's just more options. But I should have a good Saint. I've never had a good Saints one. I've never had a good Premier League one. They're always just usually things I can't actually. They won't let me write them in there a lot of times. The ones that I want to use because they're bad words. But
and also then there's the character limits. That's pretty confining as well.
Yeah,
I always come up with ones that are too long.
Yeah, and I'm not going to use the name of the podcast because I don't want to once again embarrass myself. But
is that define you too early? People will know who it is, so you don't want it.
Yeah. I want them to have to do some digging. Like, oh, what is this guy doing? Oh, that's who it is. Like that. Nobody cares that much.
That guy that podcasts about football every week.
Yeah, you think he knows? People will find if you ever ask me anything else about any other like team or whatever, I'm just like, I got nothing. I got one. I'm a one-trick pony here. It's just Southampton Football Club. Unless I'm talking to somebody who's never heard of football before, and then I sound smart. But not.
I love those people.
Yeah,
love those people.
It's I try not to explain things to people all the time because it's just not necessary. But anyway, we have a couple of listener questions, and they kind of address the other things that I was going to ask you about anyway. And I've tried really hard to avoid just the standard opening season questions, but we will get to at least a few of those, mostly because I have one concern. Luke Millard, 505, one of the patrons of the show, and they have priority for having their questions answered on the show each week. He asks, can we keep 4 keepers happy all season, or does one need to go off on loan or a transfer? What's your idea about our goalkeeping situation? What do you see happening?
Well, I think we're still paying the price for giving Forster that ridiculous contract. I think we assumed he'd go to Celtic and that would all be smoothed over, and clearly he's not interested in doing that.
Right.
So that's made life awkward. I wondered, and I think a few people have suggested this, that Gunn would go on loan because clearly isn't going to get in the team anytime soon. Has probably tarnished his reputation to a certain extent where it comes to 9-0s and things. Mm-hmm. But I still think there's probably the opportunity for him to kind of resurrect things at his stage of his career. I would think that there's the opportunity for him to go somewhere else, build a bit of confidence. Because people were very, very positive about him before he came. As much as it was a bizarre transfer because it wasn't really what we needed, you could see why he'd been recruited. So I did wonder if he'd go elsewhere to kind of try and, as I say, kind of resurrect things and get things back on track. Because I think Forster's always going to be a difficult one to shift out because presumably you've got to work out an agreement about the wages because no one's going to take all of them. And he has certain limitations as far as I'm concerned, which means that Premier League clubs wouldn't be that interested. So yes, I don't know if the current situation is really tenable, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Gunn go out on a temporary basis before the end of the window. I think people forget actually the windows. We don't close the window until October, so There's still quite a lot of time for things to move.
Yeah, and I mean, with the age of Forster and McCarthy, Gunn still has time to go out on loan,
absolutely,
come back, and I think that's important. I think selling him now would be a bit of a panic move. And so I don't necessarily want to see that happen. I do feel like you do though, that he needs to go out and play. He's been a first team regular in the championship. I don't really want to see him go lower than that. I want to see him go somewhere.
Yeah, there's no point, is there?
Yeah. So he's not, I mean, we saw some guys go on loan to basically non-league clubs, at some point. It's just like, what's happening? You hope they're better than that, but we'll just have to see kind of what happens to Gunn. So and also looking at the squad, Luke asks, do we need a replacement for Højbjerg or a backup for Romeu? Which one is it? What are we looking for potentially in the transfer market, do you think? And what do you think we need, I guess?
I think we need a replacement for Højbjerg. At the same time, I think we do, but I wouldn't panic if we didn't. I think we need a body of some kind.
Yeah.
I know that doesn't sound incredibly sophisticated. We need one of those two things. We need a young backup to Romeu, because I know people are very enthusiastic about Smallbone. I know Ralph is particularly enthusiastic about Smallbone, but I don't think he's ready to be starting games in the Premier League as a central midfielder.
Yeah.
I think that was quite clear from the way he was used at the end of last season. And given that we've had a shortened break, I don't think we can really reasonably guess that he would have moved on significantly from that player in the interim. So I don't think we're at that stage. So I think we do need someone who is capable of starting in the Premier League as a central midfielder, whether that is someone of a kind of significant ability that he replaces Romeu or he kind of comes in as competition for Romeu. But it does feel like we are incredibly short in central midfield at the moment. I'm not actually that, and you'll probably have actually a much stronger opinion on this than I do, because you'll have seen more of him. But McKennie, I actually heard incredibly mixed things about him, and so the idea that we've missed out on him at quite a considerable fee for a club of our size, that doesn't irk me incredibly. What does concern me is that there doesn't seem to be any noise about an alternative. And I am wondering if they still need to get more players off the books before we can do it. I have seen today Boufal was linked with a move.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that needs to happen before they can get someone through the door. But yeah, I do think we need a body of some kind. It's just a question of what the club can finance. I think they'd be incredibly naive to go beyond the end of the window without someone in there.
Yeah.
Given that you don't even have the option of Lamina or Reed now. So
Right. I think my thoughts on McKennie, having Dave Lee, a friend of mine and listener to the show and patron, is a Schalke fan, so talked to him quite a bit, and definitely mixed. Definitely not the polished product, but I think if you look, like, I'm almost not even sure if we were ever actually interested just because of the price, but he ticks all the boxes in terms of age, in terms of attributes, and the ability to grow and mature and improve on those things. The position he plays, it fits a need for us. It just all would have kind of worked, and it was almost too perfect. And I actually, and I could be, people can disagree, but I think he's missed something by going to Juve instead of coming to us, which sounds stupid, but I think he's going to go there and he's going to struggle for minutes, most likely. I'm not sure he's going to fit that system as well as he would have fit into Ralph's system. And I think Ralph has a track record of improving players and making players better, especially in when they're that young. And our club is good at that. And I think had he come to us, he still could have gone to Juve on the next transfer, and he would have been in a better position to really challenge for a starting place. But that said, you can't really go hey, don't go to Juve. Like, that doesn't happen.
It's not going to happen, is it?
So I can be that, and I'm definitely probably biased about it because I'm obviously a Southampton fan and I wanted him here, and I would love for an American to play for us and just be a real standout player. But he was expensive, and we were going to have to suffer some growing pains with him. And maybe if you're going to pay that much money for a player, you're not really willing to do that yet. But especially in a position where we're probably going to need him to play almost right away. But then you look at other options and it's like, well, everybody else is going to have to prove themselves too. So I'm not exactly sure about that. But I definitely think if we're going to buy somebody, I would rather it be a replacement for Højbjerg and not just a backup. I don't really want to see us spend any significant amount of money just to fill a gap if they're not going to start. And even though I think we probably actually, like as you said, need a body just to fill out the squad almost. But I hate to see that because the squad is bloated as it is. It's just not where we need it. Like we have too many center backs and a guy who doesn't score, on loan somewhere. And,
yeah.
we're still suffering.
I suppose
from
I should have elaborated more in the sense that the backup to Romeo needed to be someone that we could develop into something more than a backup to Romeo.
Right. Absolutely.
Rather than, just a body that's just, someone rubbish.
Lastly.
Like Jeff Hendrick, for example. Sorry, I just wanted to get Jeff Hendrick dig in because Tom thinks it's a really good signing for Newcastle, so I just had to get that in.
I don't think he is. I don't know who he is. So once again, one trick.
Oh, it's from Burnley. Burnley.
Well, gross. Burnley. How often do Burnley midfielders touch the ball? Right? They watch it go over their head one way and over their head the other way, and then buy them on the ground going when the other team counterattacks. Like that's what happens. So
that is the best put down that I've ever had. Right, that's great. I'll pass that on.
Sorry. I hate Burnley. Mowgli_Young on Instagram says, with Tottenham being the latest club to feature in a documentary special, is it something that either of us would like to see from some point at some point from Saints? I mean, the fact that they titled it All or Nothing was fantastic because in the end it's nothing, right? Like you got nothing.
And with Spurs it generally is.
Yeah, which is great. But I mean, would you want to see the behind the scenes of Saints? I kind of think about it, and
I'm just thinking public demand for it.
Yeah,
I think about Saints is probably very low. I think actually last season would have been a really good documentary because you obviously go from the kind of the general positivity in pre-season to the 9-0 where we looked absolutely down and out, and then the kind of positivity of post-lockdown. That would probably be quite kind of a decent thing to watch.
Yeah, the story.
I just think in general though, just not really. And also, I just don't think you'd get much. I think it'd be quite a cagey documentary because I think there's still a certain guardedness from the club about their kind of like communications with fans and the public more generally.
Yeah,
I just don't think it would be. I don't think it would yield much kind of in terms of getting kind of genuine insight into how the clubs run. So actually no, not really. And probably also people would then judge me more,
for
being a
Saints
fan. Yeah. So
I feel like if they
probably should be more positive on that question.
No, I mean
I struggle.
I feel like if they did it, it would wind up being 3 20-minute episodes, and they would just put it on the club's YouTube channel because that's about what you would get. Because I'm not sure, like you said, you would get a lot out of it. We don't seem to be very forthcoming with information. We don't have. I mean, Hassan Hoodle is, I guess, a pretty charismatic figure, but he's not. I'm not sure he's enough to carry the.
No.
He's not Jose Mourinho, who I haven't watched the Tottenham thing, but everything I've read says he's fantastic in this. So I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest. I don't really watch TV. I listen to podcasts and I watch Saints and I watch some other football, but not much, as you can tell by my other knowledge.
The Jeff Hendrick blank.
Yeah, I didn't watch the whole Man City one. I've started the Sunderland Till I Die 3 times. I've gotten 47 seconds into the intro and fallen asleep. So I've seen them walk into the locker room like the first game or something. That's it. And like, I don't sit and watch TV. I just can't. I don't know. I'd rather sleep. So I probably wouldn't watch it.
When get up at 5 a.m. to do podcasts.
Yeah. Well, that's the life I've chosen. But anyway, so I'm not sure I would do it. Not that I wouldn't want the inside look, but I'm just not sure. Like you said, the wider appeal. I'm sure the media team is good. They could do something. They could put something together if they wanted to do it, but I wouldn't want it to be like a big Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever special.
I think what you're saying about Hassan is that I think he is quite a charismatic manager, and I think he's quite a big personality, but I don't think he's one of those personalities that particularly likes TV cameras.
No.
So I don't think it would work from that perspective. You'd have to almost like do a kind of fly on the wall, kind of like just spy on him.
Yeah.
Because wouldn't really like it, I don't think so.
It would be
I'm not sure it would work.
A bunch of Ring doorbells on the outside of every door.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes.
All right. Well, I would ask you questions about like, top goal scorer and things like that, but I think, I don't know. I'm despite what it sounded like in this episode, I am excited about the season. I think we're in a pretty good position. I am excited to watch us play, and I think I assume kind of you are about the same. Even though I'm not sure we're going to go top 7. I'm not sure we're going to go Europa League, but I think I on the other show I said 9th would be fine with me. I'd be very happy with that if we finished 12th again at some point. Like anywhere 9, 10, 11. I would like to break top half, but I don't know. Like what are your thoughts on that in terms of where you think we'll finish, and then we'll cut it there, and you can go enjoy the rest of your day.
I think I'd probably go for kind of 12th to 9th being pretty good. I don't really expect us to finish any higher than that.
Yeah.
Mainly because there are quite a lot of really good teams that probably, I mean, for example, Everton always seem to spend a lot of money and probably want to do better than they are. There's obviously got like the likes of Wolves and Leicester who are always really strong and are kind of amongst it.
Yeah. And
obviously Arsenal, you'd expect them to be better than they were. So, there's quite a lot of like congestion in front of us. Yeah. But I think 9th would be a hell of a good finish, really, considering we don't really invest that much.
Right. Right. And
yeah.
We're
and considering how bad last season was at the beginning. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but then, we did finish with, I think, was it 9 clean sheets? I think it's not terrible, right? Like, I know there's 38 games, but I don't know. I don't want to get into that. Like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be great.
Okay.
And I'm just happy that you were able to do this, and I thank you for coming on. And I look forward to doing it again in the future, as long as you are up for that.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Well, if people want to follow you on Twitter, you're at Lucy Highnett. The link is in the show notes as always. And thanks for coming on and putting up with the rambling. Most people won't hear all of it because I'll cut it, make myself sound smart. But I promise to leave in the part where I said I don't know anything else about football other than our team. So thanks a lot, Lucy. I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me on. We'll have another chat soon. I hope we're feeling as positive then as we are now.
We can only hope. And that does it for this week's episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed it. Special thanks this week goes out to Lucy Highnett. You can follow her on Twitter at Lucy Highnett. FPL advice, Saints FC advice, just level-headed approach to most things. That's what you'll get when you follow her. If you follow me, I can't guarantee any of that stuff, but the show is at SFCDELL_IVERY on both Twitter and Instagram. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/SFC Delivery. You can get all that and more, like the newsletter, at southamptondelivery.com, which is the show website. So head on over there, sign up for the newsletter. We'll be in your inbox on Friday, and thank you in advance for doing that. There are a lot of people that work behind the scenes to make everything for this show come together. Those partners of the show include Matt Beeling of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. He did the logo for the show. The Southampton page on Twitter at Southampton page, and on Instagram at Southampton page 1 will keep you up to date with all the things going on around Saints. And the Saints Archive is developing a great community of fans who love the history and the club that is Southampton. You can be a part of that by following along and joining the group, and all the links to all of that are in the show notes. Music for the show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the end of show credits that you listen to right now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. If you are enjoying the show, maybe you're new, maybe you're not, it would really help if you left a review on iTunes or wherever you listen. And if you're really above and beyond that, like you want to go above and beyond, you can become a patron at patreon.com/SFC Delivery. There are links to that in the show notes. I hate advertising that, but it is one of the things that helps the show keep going. So thank you to all the patrons. We'll have some stuff coming to you soon. And we'll be back next week in this feed. And until then, we're in it together. We march on. Hold on 1 second. Poppy. Close that door. The clanging of the metal spoon against the glass bowl is impossible to remove from the show. as is the ridiculously loud coffee maker.